everybody, it's Trish Uhl from Owl's Ledge, and I'm here with
Robert Lavigne from the Digital Grapevine.
Hey Rob. Hey, really awesome to take us through what it is that you've discovered with the latest in the multimodal version of GPT-4o. So this is like the latest update that now gives image generation capabilities or has enabled image generation capabilities for the GPT-4o model. We're going to walk through that in just a moment. But before I have you walk through everybody what it is that you just walked me through, I want to make sure that everybody kind of connects with our SkillsTrek characters. So these are characters that we've been living with for like a really, really long time. This is our crew. And we started out, how long ago did we start out with these guys
Two
as
years?
Adobe characters,
At
right?
least 2 years, I want to say, maybe a year and
So
a half.
it's got to be longer than that, don't
Uh,
you think, with the
an
character
eternity
animation?
in our days.
And in eternity, it's probably closer to three. So we've got Ollie, we've got the captain, Diana Moreau, we've got Ollie, and then we've got Sylvia Kane on the end there. And so, Rob, show us what it is that GPT-4o as a multimodal image generator can now do, being able to use both the power of image generation and language models.
Yeah. So one of the fundamental differences is everything that's happening now is done within the model. It's not an external call to DALL-E, right? So in the past, you would have used Chat GPT to kind of describe your image. It would then take that description, truncate it down to a limited size, send that to DALL-E, generate an image, display it in Chat GPT. And that was fine. And you still do that for most. What's different now with 4o is this particular model has the image rendering built right into it. So it's not all of a sudden a separate call. It sees it as text in many ways, is how I view it. So what we basically have is the ability to render imagery, but also understand imagery. So it's able to take images as input, but also images as output. And the image input has been there since 4o has been released. It's the image output that has been enabled recently. So what we're doing right now is we're using a base image that we're uploading to Chat GPT, and we're just going to give it a little task. We're basically say, review the original image, render properly from left to right. And I'm just letting you know that it's an alien, a female, a male, and a female, just to give the genders, because sometimes you can't tell with puppets, right? But as hyper-realistic, keeping all their existing traits and features. So what does that mean? It needs to understand what it sees before it generates an output. So you're not necessarily seeing its thought process here, but it came back with its interpretation of that crew in a hyper-realistic fashion on another planet. But it's not 100% perfect. Like there's some variations there from the original thing. The helmet is a bit different, stuff like that that you pick up on when you've lived with these characters for so long. But this is the first time that you and I would have seen these characters in a hyper-realistic fashion, having
Crazy.
been animated cartoons for so long, right? So
Right.
very somber look for the crew. I think we both picked up on that. So I basically said, that's a perfect shot, but I want it to be less dystopian. So the came back with the crew, and now it started making a few changes to the characters, but for the most part, it's still there. But you'll notice in the case of Sylvia, she doesn't have her trademark eye goggles, right? The
Right.
captain looks a bit different than before,
Yeah.
but it's definitely understood my request that it's not as dystopian, but they're
Right.
still kind of miserable. So
Yeah.
once again, within the context window, I'm just saying now cheer them up. So it's not a scenario where it's recreating an image every time. It has an understanding of what it's done before, and I'm now tailoring it. It's only adjusting the elements that it feels it needs to change. Now, I wasn't very clear to it in terms of the look and styling of the people. So you have certain things like, once again, Sylvia's missing her eyepieces. She doesn't have her signal thing, so it's changed her chest plate a bit there. And the
Yeah.
crew is kind of varied a bit, but they're still kind of resembling the crew. And if this was the first run that we did, we'd probably be happy with it. But what I want to do is show you the different way of doing it. We've taken the same image as the starting point, but I'm going to ask it now to revisit the finer details of the crew, because I think you may have missed some stuff, such as the opticals on the crew member. But before it does the render, it's going to use the language model to describe it. Now that context is within our conversation. It wasn't necessarily there in that fashion before. So now when I'm asking it to do a render, it's going to factor in this detail into it. And we are, as a result, going to get a far more accurate version of the crew right down to the eye goggles, right? And I think that's the main messaging there. It's one thing to be able to input an image, have it understand what that image is, but you still need to kind of give it a bit more context, or at least ask it for that context so that it's there as a reference point. So now whenever I do an image reference, it will have very clear expectations about the crew member in addition to a base image.
Described literally in its own words. And I think
described
again,
in its own words.
And you said it a moment ago, and I think that this is like really, really key. Like when it is that ChatGPT was using DALL-E, a separate image generation model that uses diffusion, it would rerun the diffusion model every time, which is why it couldn't keep the consistent characters. Yeah. Now you can talk to the model in the way that you're talking to the model to make these incremental changes to make just those tailored or specific optimized improvements that you're looking to have. But you're using the power of prompting it with the original image again to give it that reference point, and then also the language. You're using both modalities in order to be able to get the outcomes that you want.
And that's fundamentally it. Is I don't view this as an image anymore. We hinted at this in a previous conversation. I've viewed this as a base 64 set of data, and the LLM is just viewing that base 64 as language, and we're just playing with a different language. So I'm using the language of graphics as opposed to language of text. But because it is all within its own little understanding of language, it's able to process it all together and make sense of it all. And not only that, have a much better generator tool. So the output that's generating is far above DALL-E as well. And it's not just the fact that it's got more context. It is a completely different engine in terms of a diffusion model. So much so that I'm questioning whether or not it even is a diffusion model behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah, this is really fabulous. I'm so glad that you showed me this, because I had no idea that it had these capabilities now. I knew it had changed to a multimodal, but I had no idea how to work with it or how to be effective and how to work with it. So I really appreciate that.
There we go.
Very cool. Excellent. Well, thanks so much. So again, this is Trish Uhl with Owl's Ledge and
Robert Lavigne from the Digital Grapevine.
Yay cake.
Yay cake.